Hey everybody, Nick Yor here, joined alongside by Yosef Nasser and director over there, Derek Kramer. And we're going to be doing a little bit of an NFL roundtable, taking you through the upcoming NFL draft, which is tomorrow on prime time from Nashville on ESPN. It's going to be 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And there's been a ton of mock drafts out there, so we're going to do our own rotating through the picks between us. And we got to start up top with number one. We're going to go to you for the number one pick, Yosef, as the Arizona Cardinals are on the clock, and you are GM Steve Keim. What are you doing with that pick?
Quick clarification. Are we doing it the way that we would do it or the way that we think it's going to go, or kind of a combination between both?
I think we're going to do a little bit of combination, but leaning towards where you think is going to go. So you're trying to predict this the most accurate way possible, like true mock drafts, I would say, like Kuiper and McShay.
So we've heard some noise about Nick Bosa, some last-second noise about Nick Bosa potentially being the guy. Ultimately, I think you got to go Kyler Murray, a guy who can rejuvenate that fan base, a guy who's electric with both his legs, but also really dynamic as a passer. I think you get him, team him up with David Johnson, Cliff Kingsbury, of course, the new head coach, Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, Ricky Seals-Jones. You have potential of something special offensively. I think this is the most dynamic athlete we've seen since Michael Vick. I'm putting him past Lamar Jackson. I'm putting him past Robert Griffin. The guy's acceleration is crazy, and he's a really proficient passer as well. I'm going Kyler Murray, number one.
Yeah, and it's a little bit interesting these past couple of years. You've seen the past where number one pick is even signed before the draft.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what's going to happen with that number one pick. Last year was a little bit of mystery with Baker Mayfield and the Browns. You didn't know what they were going to do, and a little bit of mystery as well here at the Cardinals. Very intriguing, keeps the draft intriguing at the top. We're going to go with the number 2 pick. I'll take this one with the 49ers. And I think with Kyler Murray off the board, it's going to be best player available for the 49ers at pick 2. And I think most people would agree that it is Nick Bosa will be that pick, the defensive end from Ohio State, younger brother of Joey Bosa, plays for the Chargers, just very good football family, and will immediately come in and be opposite pass rusher of D Ford, who they signed from Kansas City. So that'd be a great pick for 49ers. And then we'll move on to the Jets. We'll go over to Derek. Who do you think the Jets will be taking at pick 3?
So it seems like Josh Allen is like kind of the unanimous pick here, but I really think that Quinnen Williams is like the most dominant player in the whole draft, aside from Nick Bosa maybe. But like Quinnen Williams should be the 3rd pick, but I guess the Jets, people thought that they were going to sign Dante Fowler or somebody on the edge, so I think Josh Allen probably makes the most sense there.
Yeah, and they had Anthony Barr actually commit to New York and then negate on that contract and go to Minnesota. Allen more of a pass rusher, but can also do a lot of the things that Barr does from the edge. Maybe that is the plug-and-play there. And we'll move on to Oakland at number 4, one of 3 picks in the first round for John Gruden, new GM, Mike Mayock. So they really got to start well here as this 4th pick, and Yosef will go to you in Oakland.
I like the pick by Derek, Josh Allen. Before I get to my pick, a lot of people said, people that had played against Josh Allen, offensive linemen were asked, who's the best player you've gone against? Unanimously almost, people said Josh Allen. So I think it's a really good pick. The Jets have a need on the edge, but I agree with Derek in that Quinnen Williams is considered one of the top 2 players, regardless of position in this draft. I think the Raiders swoop him up here. He's such a dominator on the interior, really good athlete. I think that this is a foundational piece that the Raiders need to rebuild their defense after trading Khalil Mack. I think Quinnen Williams is the pick here for the Raiders.
Now, do you think that is more need or just
best player available
at that time, can't not take him at that time?
You need to get a foundational piece. If you can't get a quarterback who you feel is like your next guy, Derek Carr, I'm not sure how they feel about him. It seems like they're going to stick with him unless there's a situation where they could get Kyler Murray. But if they stay here, I think Quinnen Williams is the guy. We talked about John Gruden being in love with Ed Oliver. That's another option here. But I think I'm gonna stick to the board. I'm gonna stick it with Quinnen Williams, and I think that's who they would take in this situation.
All right, we'll move on to number 5 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. New head coach Bruce Arians, great hire there in Tampa. I'm a huge Bruce Arians fan. They have a lot of needs. I mean, just looking, you have linebacker. Secondary was atrocious last year. Defensive line would need some help besides Gerald McCoy, and obviously Jameis Winston would like maybe some more weapons after losing Adam Humphries and Deshaun Jackson in free agency. You still have Mike Evans, Cameron Brate, and O.J. Howard at the tight end position. But also you need maybe a running back could be a key here, a need here. But I think you really have to go, when you go linebacker, there are 2 stud linebackers in this draft, and you need one of them. At 5, he's not going to be there much longer, especially when you have the Giants who love defense waiting below you and the Jaguars. I think they'll go Devin White, linebacker at LSU, can really just a 3-down linebacker, really take control of that defense that is so desperately needs a leader, and he can do that from that middle position. And we're going to go from number 6. We're going to go back to Yosef for the Giants pick on number 6. And I'm going to put you on a clock here. There's a lot of people have been thinking the local kid from Bullis, Dwayne Haskins, but been a little bit of a rumors that might not happen. Where do you think the Giants go? Obviously, BJ Kurulis, big Giants fan as well.
This is fascinating. To clarify, the reason I'm doing one pick, I'm sandwiching your pick so Derek can have the Jaguars pick. We all know Derek is one of 17 Jaguars fans in the United States. So we want to give him that opportunity. With the Giants, I'm tempted to go with we're hearing a lot of Daniel Jones buzz, and
At 6 though,
it's very strange. Yeah, I think they try to fortify that line. I think they're going to take Jawan Taylor here, the offensive tackle from Florida. I think they're big about building along the lines. They signed Nate Solder to an off-season deal. He didn't really live up to that. I think with Gettleman, they've kind of got that old school run the football approach, build along the lines. They trade for Kevin Zeitler this offseason, a guy who was a stellar right guard for the Browns and the Bengals past few seasons. I think Jawan Taylor is a safe pick. I expect the Giants to do something crazy, whether it's trade down, whether it's trade up, whether it's take Daniel Jones at 6. But, if I'm going to stay conservative here, stick to the board, I'm going to go with Jawan Taylor, offensive tackle from Florida.
A lot of people would say that is a little crazy, taking an offensive tackle that probably is more of a right tackle than he is a left tackle so high at 6 when you have so many other needs on your board. But it does make a lot of sense when you talk about David Gettleman. He's preached a lot. He likes to build his team from the inside out. And that starts with solid offensive line and defensive line play, something that the Giants desperately need. So, obviously, a position of need there. And then we go to the number 7 pick with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We've been waiting for this one right here. Derek Kramer on the clock in Jacksonville.
I think the ideal situation for the Jaguars is obviously a trade down, because I think Jonah Williams and TJ Hawkinson are definitely the 2 biggest guys. We need a tight ends. Our number 1 tight end right now is, what's his name? O'Shaughnessy.
Yep.
O'Shaughnessy, yeah.
O'Shaughnessy. And, he's solid.
It's a blocker first.
He's more of a receiver, honestly, too. But TJ Hawkinson, he's, like you said, the number 1 best rated tight end ever. But I told Yosef last week, name the best first-round tight ends.
Vernon Davis. Yeah, that's a good point.
A lot of people that just were okay, but all the great tight ends have been mid-round draft picks, and so it sucks to reach in the top 10 for TJ Hawkinson. And same thing with Jonah Williams. They're saying he might not be a tackle, and we've already got Cam Robinson at left tackle, but we need a right tackle. So I wouldn't be upset with Jonah or TJ at number 7, but ideally I think we trade down with somebody like Atlanta or somebody who covets Ed Oliver or somebody like that.
I've got the trade for you right here. I'm the Washington Redskins. Okay. I'm going to trade up. I'm going to go ahead and get my guy. So you come down. We'll, whatever the compensation is, we'll balance it out. Here's the trade. I'm the Washington Redskins, and you know what? I'm taking the Bullis guy, Dwayne Haskins.
Love it.
Yeah, I think it meets both needs. The Redskins want to get up to get a quarterback. There was a report today on Twitter saying that they want to trade up, get a quarterback, and the report was suggesting that their guy is Daniel Jones. I think that's a smokescreen. I think they're recognizing that Dwayne Haskins, for whatever reason, the public perception of him is lower than what we think of him. But I think they're trying to capitalize on that smokescreen. They get their guy, a guy who played at Bullis, a school that we're very familiar with, covering the DMV. I think the Redskins are going to trade up with the Jaguars, take Dwayne Haskins from Ohio State, and they should. I think Dwayne Haskins is the second best prospect in this draft, a guy who's really accurate. The knock on him is his athleticism, but I think he's a guy who's poised. I think he's been able to get it done this past year, and I think he's a very worthwhile pick for the Redskins. I think the Redskins should be happy if they're somehow able to get Dwayne Haskins.
I would agree 100%. I mean, moving up from 15 to 7 could cost them more than they would like, but if you go get your guy in the end, I do agree with that. But if you do think Haskins might fall, maybe you do wait, but I agree. Go get your guy, especially if it is Dwayne Haskins. It would fit great here in Washington. So move on to Detroit, picking number 8, and I have them taking Montez Sweat, the defensive end out of Mississippi State. Some saw he is dropping a little bit because of some heart related issues, but the Lions really needed some pass rushing, and they have a lot of needs, quite frankly. But first off is really cornerback play to go against with Tease Tabor, because he's on the other edge. He did very well this past year. A local boy from Friendship Collegiate. Shout out to Tease Tabor, did very well. They need another corner to go alongside him and edge rusher. I think 8 is a little too high for a corner. They don't have quite that type of corner prospect in this draft. So I think edge, best available. Montez Sweat is definitely a top 10 pick for Mississippi State.
I like that pick. Pick on the edge. They lose Ezekiel Ansah to free agency. He's struggled with injuries. They need that alpha on the edge, that presence, and I think Montez Sweat, if he's healthy, can be an 8 to 12 sack a year guy. I like the pick from you.
Yep. So we'll move on to Joseph. We'll move on to Joseph's. Derek did Jacksonville. We'll move on to 9 Buffalo Bills. And who do you have them taking in Buffalo? Obviously, a lot of needs for the Bills.
So for Buffalo, I have a sense that they're going to fall in love with the combination of Josh Allen's big arm and get him a receiver who can go deep. We understand that they picked up John Brown and Cole Beasley to give Josh Allen some weapons, but those are guys who are towards the end of the second half of the career, let's say. Cole Beasley had some great years for the Cowboys. John Brown looked rejuvenated last season for the first half of the season with Joe Flacco. When Lamar Jackson came in, he was more focused on hitting the tight ends and the backs out of the backfield. But I think DK Metcalf having that big receiver who can go down the field, I think the Bills are going to fall in love with that. I think DK Metcalf is the guy for the Bills. That's who I'm taking.
Yeah, I like the pick. Need a big arm, need a big downplay receiver, and he's a bigger receiver compared to those smaller slot guys that you said. Obviously, a little bit of wary in Buffalo with the last first-round pick they spent on receiver. Sammy Watkins didn't quite work out, so maybe a little bit of tension there, but DK Metcalf, obviously a great player. And we'll move on to Denver at number 10. Very interesting pick because of John Elway at GM. A lot of needs along that team. Just signed Joe Flacco in the offseason. We'll go to Derek, who thinks what they will do in Denver.
So, yeah, I was actually going to say DK Metcalf at Denver because same thing, Joe Flacco, big arm. And to go pair with Emmanuel Sanders, they lost Demaryius Thomas, so that would have been a good pickup. But I think I'm not sure who they have on the O-line, but I think Andre Dillard and Jonah Williams are both really good picks and good value at number 10. So, and I mean, Denver's defense has always been stout. So I think they need to go offense right here. So either the best playmaker available or shore up the O-line. I just can't imagine if they fall in love with like a big, tall quarterback.
Yeah, it seems like
I just can't imagine if they do it again. Like it's just such a running joke that if they do it again, I just can't imagine.
So who's it going to be? Who's the pick for you?
I'll say Jonah Williams.
Okay.
Just he's a solid just leader too. I think he's a good pick for the organization.
Okay, so it's Jonah Williams 10 to Denver, and that is back to me for the Cincinnati Bengals at number 11. And I know they have a new head coach, Zach Taylor, probably want offensive mind, probably want to spend a little bit on offense, but I think that really with the Bengals, when you go position of need, I mean, they lose a lot on the defensive end, especially at linebacker. So I think they're probably going to take Devin Bush, linebacker out of Michigan, and play 3 downs, middle linebacker, kind of take over that role for Vontaze Burfict and kind of officially put an end to the Marvin Lewis, Vontaze Burfict, that whole Bengals era. And we have a new offensive mind, new head coach coming in, really going to take the ropes, kind of try to elevate this offense with Andy Dalton and A.J. Green like Sean McVay did in Los Angeles. Now you get a big defensive piece to go along with that and try to rebuild on the defensive side as well. Devin Bush to Cincinnati. And then we will go to another big-time pick of interest, and that is number 12, Green Bay Packers. And Joseph, what are you thinking out of Green Bay is what you've heard?
So before we did this exercise, I would have guessed that the Packers would be in a position to take either a DK Metcalf or a TJ Hawkinson to help Aaron Rodgers. The way that the board has shaken out with the trade up for Haskins, the Buffalo Bills taking DK Metcalf, I see some value slipping down the board. The 3 guys I would be contemplating here would be TJ Hawkinson, who I already mentioned, Ed Oliver, who some people have as a top 5 prospect, and then Jerry Tillery, also another guy, an interior defender who is really dynamic as well. I'm going to take Ed Oliver, though. I see the value there. I think the Packers can use him as a 3 technique, a 5 technique. I mean, he played some 1 technique in college. I think that Ed Oliver is the guy here from Houston, a guy who was thought of entering this past season as potentially the number 1 prospect. Good value here for the Packers getting Ed Oliver at number 12. That's my pick.
Okay, so we have Ed Oliver to the Packers, best player available there. And then another interesting pick, 13 to Miami. A lot of people think they need, well, everyone knows they need a quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick is not the answer long-term there, but a lot of people are thinking their plan is more the 2020 draft with Tua Tagovailoa, stuff like that. But now you have a lot of quarterbacks available still. Drew Lock is still there. Daniel Jones still there, so maybe that's where they go. But Derek, where do you think they go in Miami? The Dolphins, obviously, a lot of needs on that team.
Well, I like that Ed Oliver pick to go with Mike Daniels. Two got kind of shorter, deep tackles. I like that. That's a lot of explosiveness in the D line. But that's a tough pick because nobody knows what Miami's really up to. But I guess Andre Dillard would probably be a nice foundational piece at 13 for Miami. I'm not sure how their O-line is looking right now. I know they've been beat up on the O-line a lot recently. But, I'll go Andre Dillard.
Yeah, so Andre Dillard, I think a lot of Miami fans would be upset with that pick just because they've spent a lot of first-round capital on offensive linemen in the past, most recently Laramie Tunsil, and now you're drafting another tackle when they have so many positions of need. But obviously, the offensive lineman is a need based off the injuries last year, and getting Dillard at 13, arguably the best pass-protecting tackle or the best tackle overall at 13 is a steal, so that's a good pick there. And number 14, I think if this guy's still available, Atlanta is running to the board to take him, and that is defensive tackle Christian Wilkins from Clemson. I think that would be a great pick to shore up that defensive line, really help them in the run game, and I think that'll be really huge for them at 14. And then we're going to go back to Derek for 15, as this was the trade, and Jacksonville is now on the clock at 15.
Yeah, if they could get Dwayne Haskins, I mean, that's a home run. And Daniel Jones and what's the Missouri guy? Drew Lock. I mean, that's just not a sexy pick. I don't think the Redskins nation. But if they don't go quarterback, what do you think the biggest position in need is? I mean, running back, they're set. O-line, they could use it. They got banged up a little bit, so they could.
This is the Jacksonville's pick.
You're picking for Jacksonville right now.
Wait,
if TJ Hawkinson is available at 15,
he's there.
I'm running.
That's why you made
like,
the trade.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
Pick
That's
up
why
some
you made
extra
the
picks
trade.
later in the draft, and you get your guy. That's awesome.
TJ Hawkinson, 15 to Jacksonville. So then we'll move on. 16, we'll go to Yosef. And
This is actually Derek's pick.
Derek,
I
I'm
originally
sorry.
had 15, so Derek, back-to-back picks for you.
Carolina.
Carolina, huh?
Looks like they say needs are edge, offensive line, safety, receiver.
We really love A.J. Brown.
Yep.
So I wouldn't put that against them. I know last year they got the Maryland guy.
Yeah, they did take a first round.
And do they still have Devin Funchess?
Nope, he's on the Colts.
Okay, so I mean, wide receiver does seem like a big need there. So it might be a little bit of a reach.
Mhm.
But I mean, A.J. Brown is, in my opinion, a first rounder. So I don't think it's too much of a reach. So this might be a reach in this draft, but I'll say A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown.
I love the pick, A.J. Brown. People criticize him saying he can't play on the outside. When DK Metcalf went out for the year with the neck injury, he went to the outside, and he was as productive as ever, a guy who's been productive since his freshman year. I think this is a really good pick for the Panthers, combining him with DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel.
So now 17 to the Giants. Is that you or me?
Let's give it to you.
Okay.
I think it's you.
So 17, we had the Giants earlier. You did that pick, and they took Jawan Taylor, offensive line. So
Did they get their quarterback here? They're in primetime position.
They are, and they could. Oh, wow. 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 Okay, just with the way this plays out, if the way it played out this way, I think the Giants would take Drew Lock 100% right here. But I don't think he's going to be available at 17.
Okay.
So I would say they go defense, and they take Brian Burns, defensive end. But since Drew Lock is still available for the Giants, I will put in Drew Lock to the Giants.
That's an interesting comment.
At
Where do you think he would go in the real draft?
I think if he's available at 10 for Elway, Elway's taking him.
Okay.
No way Elway passes up on him.
Fair enough. So I think that means I am up
18
at
Minnesota.
18 Minnesota. Okay. Minnesota, they've had chronic problems on the offensive line, and we look at the offensive linemen that are available.
It's like Cody Ford is probably going to be around the top.
So Dillard's been taken off of the board. Jawan Taylor is off of
And
the board.
Jonah Williams.
Jonah Williams is off of the board. I will go with Cody Ford. I think Cody Ford, a good player for Oklahoma. I think he will help shore up that Minnesota offensive line. I think this is a good pick for the Vikings. Let's give him Cody Ford.
Yeah, versatile, can play guard or tackle. Very good along that Oklahoma offensive line the past 2 years, creating 2 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. So we will go to 19 Tennessee Titans, the host city, Nashville. This will get a big applause to the pick or boos, depending on who it is. a huge pick for 19 for Tennessee. They have a lot of needs on this team, especially for Marcus Mariota. Derek, where do you think they will be going in Nashville, the host city, with this pick at 19?
Yeah, that's tough because, I mean, obviously, like, they're set on the offensive line and just running the ball. That's their kind of personality. And, like, I feel like they've spent on receivers recently a little bit. And same thing.
Corey Davis, Taywan Taylor.
On the other side, Malcolm Butler. I'm not sure how well he fit. So I think my first, like, gut feeling is to say cornerback.
Okay.
So I'm going to say Greedy Williams. I'm not sure. I don't know much about the Temple guy. So I'm just going to say Greedy Williams goes to Tennessee.
That is probably around the earliest Greedy could go. So that is a good pick there. Definitely a needy team.
I can't imagine no cornerbacks go in the top 20.
Exactly.
That seems a little strange.
Especially an LSU corner, the way they have played the pass in the league. It's a good pick there. I actually had him going the next pick to Pittsburgh, so right around there, 1920. So you took my pick. So it is my turn now with Pittsburgh.
Greedy Williams, one note on him, absolutely shut down DK Metcalf. Very, very, very long corner, about 6'2". I think this is a good pick for Tennessee to combine him with Logan Ryan and Malcolm Butler. I think it's a nice pick.
One guy I think we're sleeping on, who I'm not high on, but is Rashawn Gary.
Yeah.
He's kind of that Swiss Army guy who's like, I'm not a big fan of. He didn't have great stats or anything like that, great film, but he was kind of a freak at the combine.
Freak athlete.
He needs to go in the first round at least.
That's a good point. Definitely one of the best players. Definitely, I mean, some people have him as a top 10 talent.
Yep.
Right. On the 20th pick. He hasn't been gone yet. Some little motor issues, I want to say. People have been worried about.
Production, too.
Yeah, if you could expand on that, what you've heard a little bit about.
So Steve Palazzolo wrote an article from PFF, Pro Football Focus, about a month ago saying that he wouldn't take Rashawn Gary until the second round because he just felt the production wasn't there. Obviously, coming into the draft as an underclassman, he was the best player in his high school class, but production-wise wasn't there, and actually suggests that Chase Winovich, his bookend defensive end from Michigan, was a good prospect there. So Rashawn Gary, the athleticism is freakish. It's just a matter of someone falls in love with that and feels that he can develop and be consistent down to down. I think he's a good upside pick, and this is about the range, late first, early second, where he can go. Keep in mind, this is a guy who is considered a top 5 pick entering the draft, so it's potential value there.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put that in for the Steelers then at 20. Rashawn Gary, defensive lineman, can play opposite J.J. Watt.
T.J.
Watt, I'm sorry, for Pittsburgh. Get pressure on the quarterback, and if anybody's going to get the most out of a talented young man, I think it's a guy like Mike Tomlin. He can really motivate people, and he's just that kind of leader, that kind of player. So I think, or that type of coach. So I think that's a great fit for Rashawn Gary in Pittsburgh. A hardworking team, hardworking coach. You're going to have to earn everything you get there. So I think that's a good pick at 20 since Greedy Williams is off the board right before there. So now we go to 21, and Seattle, Joseph, one of their 2 first-round picks now after the recent trade. Where do you think they go with their first one at 21, having recently wrapped up Russell Williams to a massive deal?
They get Russell Wilson to a big deal. I think a guy who's fallen who, you know what, actually, we don't know what the Seahawks are going to do. They traded down from a late teens pick last year to 27 to take Rashad Penny, a running back, a controversial pick at the time. Penny had an up-and-down season, flashed some of his ability against the Rams. Chris Carson really broke out as a second-year player, a guy who was a 7th-round pick from Oklahoma State. I'm thinking best player available here, and I think a guy like Jeffrey Simmons from Mississippi State tore his ACL in the pre-draft workout. But I think this is a guy who is considered a top 5, 6, 7 type player. Being able to get him at this spot, given an opportunity to continue to rehab and get him back healthy for that 2020 season, I don't think they can pass up the value here. Keep in mind they just traded Frank Clark. Obviously, Frank Clark is an edge player. Jeffrey Simmons is an interior player, but I think they consider the fact that they've got 2 first-round picks. They're going to take the best player available here. I think that's Jeffrey Simmons. That's who I'm going with.
It's an interesting pick there. Obviously, some defensive talent still alive on the board on the defensive line. You have Brian Burns, Florida State, a couple other people, but they do go with someone maybe who didn't have quite the production, but the talent level and the ceiling is there. I mean, he's been talked about a lot this year. Late in the draft, I saw him going to New England in a couple mock drafts. They obviously recognize talent when they see it, add value, so that is a good pick there for Seattle. And then we'll go to 22 for Baltimore. Derek, obviously Lamar Jackson, new regime there in Baltimore.
Yeah, I think they go on the D-line, honestly. I think they like their running back combination that they got with, what's his name? Who did they get? Mark Ingram.
Mark Ingram, yep.
Yeah, I like that combination, and I think they drafted a bunch of tight ends the year before. And so I'm going to say they go D-line, and they take Farrell from Clemson.
Cleveland Farrell is a great pick.
Yep.
Cleveland Farrell from Clemson, one of the many Clemson defensive linemen that could go in this round. Oh, I'm glad I landed on this pick because I think this is an interesting one that I don't think a lot of people have, but I think could be a great fit for the Houston Texans at 23. And I hope you're ready for this,
Okay.
Yosef.
I'm
So they have a lot of needs, maybe some offensive line, obviously, because Deshaun Watson is running for his life back there. But a lot of the value offensive linemen, I think, have been taken so far. There may be another one with Garrett Bradbury. North Carolina State will be value around here. But I just think taking a guard, you can find another guard later in the second, third round. I think right now at 23, the Texans should take Noah Fant if available. You have solid running game the past couple years. You have Deshaun Jackson. You have DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the league, along with Will Fuller to stretch the field. What have they been missing? Tight end play. I can't even name a tight end on the Houston Texans the past couple years. Maybe C.J. Fedorowicz, and that's just because
he actually retired because of concussion issues. They took 2 tight ends last year, but none of them really flashed. Jordan Thomas and Jordan Akins.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Noah Fant is a game changer here, right up the seam, and that gives the Texans one of the most dynamic passing combinations. If Will Fuller can get back healthy, Kiki QT flashed some when he was healthy in the slot, and then DeAndre Hopkins, a monster on the outside. I think Noah Fant up the seam is a good pick there for the Texans.
Yeah, we're really excited that Noah Fant fell there. Had that in my original mock drafts, and then we'll move on to number 24, the second pick of the first round for the Oakland Raiders. Yosef, what are you doing if you're John Gruden and company in Oakland?
So with this pick, we understand they brought in Antonio Brown from Pittsburgh. They brought in Tyrell Williams from the Los Angeles Chargers as a free agent, and I think they're going to complete that receiving core with the primetime Jet, Hollywood Brown himself, Marquise Hollywood Brown. I think this guy, there's some talk about, only one player has really been successful at 166 pounds, which he's listed at. Keep in mind, though, this is a guy who had been battling the Liz Frank injury over the course of the offseason, so not going to be able to squat, presumably, work on his body the way that you would expect. I think that the concerns are overblown. This is a really big-time playmaker. Some people think that he's the absolute best player in this draft. To have him in the slot with Antonio Brown and Tyrell Williams on the outside, and keep in mind you can move Antonio Brown all over the formation. I think Marquise Hollywood Brown, a dynamic receiver who Raiders fans will fall in love with. And for this Philadelphia Eagles pick, I'm going to take this pick back-to-back. This is
number 25.
This is a really interesting one. The guy that I'm really licking my chops for is A.J. Brown. He's off the board. Derek took him, sent him to Carolina. I think so. I'm going to take – we know the Eagles invest on the defensive line. They like to keep 7-8 bodies there who they can rotate in and out. I considered corner here. I considered Byron Murphy from Washington. Darnell Savage is a guy who's really rising from Maryland. But the guy I'm going to take is Jerry Tillery from Notre Dame, a guy who can play next to Fletcher Cox. They can use him in rotation. Timmy Jernigan's no longer with the team. I think this is a perfect pick for a guy like Tillery to be able to learn next to Fletcher Cox and be a part of that rotation with Derek Barnett, Brandon Graham, of course, being able to rotate in and out. The Eagles were able to bring back Vinnie Curry, who signed a contract with the Buccaneers last year, but was released after one season. I think Jerry Tillery is a perfect pick from Notre Dame.
All right, number 26, we have the Indianapolis Colts. They have a lot of needs, both defensive line, offensive line. I think that they wanted to go Desmond Lawrence if he hit the market for the Cowboys, but they wrapped him up. And so I think defensive line, probably biggest need there. And I think if they have best player available, Brian Byrne from Florida State is still available at 26. They would be ecstatic to get him. I think that's who they take with edge rusher. Brian Burns from Florida State had a lot of production from the defensive end position, even though the team was not very good this past year. He's really just a pass rush specialist. Probably won't play too much on rundowns, but definitely can get to the quarterback, so there's some value late in 26th. And then 27, we have the Oakland Raiders with their last pick of the first round. Derek, what do you think they will do with the last pick?
So I think, I don't mean to disagree with you, of course, about your Eagles, but I think they should take Josh Jacobs.
Okay.
With the pick. I think he should be the first running back taken. I think that's what Oakland's going to do, especially with your boy Marshawn Lynch just retiring. Unofficially, officially, I don't know how it went down, but I guess he's retiring. But one guy you forgot to mention was Malik Jackson.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And they gave him $30 million, 3 years. I mean, to be a defensive tackle. So, I mean, don't sleep on my boy Malik Jackson. He was a stud for the Jaguars. Got a $92 million contract for a reason.
Yeah.
He would be pissed off if they drafted a tackle.
But the reason I agree with you. I think Malik Jackson's been an impact player. How many years is he can actually play with the Eagles? I think it's $10 million guaranteed on that contract.
So maybe only 2.
So yeah, maybe 1 or 2 years. And I think by the time Malik Jackson's ready to move on, or the Eagles are ready to move on from him, they've got Tillery right up in the wings. Fletcher Cox, he's been in the league since 2012, 28, 29 age range. So, but I understand what you're talking about. I considered running back maybe for the second round because I like some players. I like Josh Jacobs. I agree he's going to be the number 1 guy. But there are some guys later in this draft. I look at a guy like Darrell Henderson from Memphis. Right. I look at a guy like Miles Sanders from Penn State. Those are guys I would consider. It's just the running back position is the most injury-prone position. It's devalued. And when the Eagles were winning Super Bowls, their running backs were LeGarrette Blount, Jay Ajayi. So I think that you can kind of mix and match pieces there. But is Josh Jacobs your pick for Oakland?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, I had that there as well. Then we'll move on to the Chargers at 28. Interesting pick here. Very balanced, very good team that had a bit of a disappointing finish this season in New England. Can't seem to get over the hump of the Patriots. A lot of people think they need a playmaker over that hump, but the biggest needs probably are on the offensive and defensive line, where the Patriots just gashed them in the running game. That playoff series, or that playoff game, I'm sorry. So what do you think the Chargers do, the Los Angeles Chargers, at number 28?
I think Los Angeles Chargers. So I think is Garrett Bradbury still on the board?
Yes, he is.
So I think Garrett Bradbury is a good addition on the offensive line, a guy who can play center, can play guard. I think having another guy up there to help open running lanes for Melvin Gordon, help protect Phillip Rivers, keep him upright. I think he's perhaps the best player on the board, and I think that that's who they will go with in this situation.
Okay, and then we move on to 29, which was Kansas City, but then has been traded to Seattle for Frank Clark. The very talented defensive end is now in Kansas City, and the Seahawks pick up a second first-round pick. With their first round pick, they took Jeffrey Simmons for the big defensive lineman out of Mississippi State, so they have their defensive line help there. Another need is offensive line, cornerback, linebacker, safe secondary. We'll have to replace Earl Thomas. So I think cornerback, they tend to like taller corners in Seattle. I know Byron Murphy is technically the higher-rated corner, but I know he is on the smaller end at 5'11" out of Washington. I think they go with a little bit of a bigger corner, which is DeAndre Baker, a little bit more physical, out of Georgia, 6'1" cornerback. I think they take DeAndre Baker, Seattle, 29 from Georgia. So then we'll go to 30 with the Packers' second pick. They had their second first-round pick out of a trade last year with the Saints, which got them Marcus Davenport. So the Packers have their second first-round pick. And with their first one, they took Ed Oliver in our mock draft. So with their second pick, Derek, who do you in the first round, where do you think the Packers are going?
I'll go with Byron Murphy here.
Yep.
I'm not sure what the Green Bay's defensive backs are looking like these days, but I'll go with Byron Murphy. I think he's a first-round pick.
Yep, definitely could use help there. Had Jair Alexander last year in the first round, but definitely need some help in the slot.
That's right.
But no, they.
Louisville?
I think he was Louisville. Yeah, I just knew that because my friend is a diehard Packers fan. But so 31, we move on to the Rams. Yosef, where do you think the Super Bowl runner-ups go with Sean McVay?
So I think the Rams are a team that's set at receiver with Woods, Cooper Kupp, as well as Woods, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks. I think I would look here for the Rams, maybe a playmaker in the secondary. That seems to be where the value is. The Rams, I will go ahead and give them Darnell Savage, a guy that I mentioned, tore up the offseason workout process, really athletic, a guy who can be a playmaker in the secondary. You can use him as a starter. You can use him in packages. You can blitz him. He can cover. I think Darnell Savage is a guy that I will take from Maryland, the safety, local guy. Darnell Savage, give him to the Rams.
It's a good pick. Very talented player. Makes a lot of plays all over the field there at Maryland.
Super Bowl champs up right here.
Yeah, and it could go a lot of different ways. I feel like, they like to come in and take a quarterback late, try to steal somebody late. I think they'll try to do that, or maybe offensive line with the local guy, Chris Lindstrom from Boston College.
Like that.
But I just think that's
What about the receiver spot?
That's just I feel like the three receivers or
Neil
Harry
Harry's
maybe.
still there.
I just feel like
Irv Smith from Alabama, the tight end.
Yeah, I was thinking Irv Smith Jr., the tight end, or Daniel Jones from Duke, the quarterback. I'm thinking they're going to go Irv Smith Jr. to replace Rob Gronkowski as that downfield tight end, and they'll probably get a better blocker to replace him on that front. So any questions, concerns, points we need to make after this mock draft from anybody?
I think let's just remind the viewers who we've got. So Murray, Bosa, Josh Allen, Quinnen Williams, Devin White for Tampa, Jawan Taylor, Dwayne Haskins, Montez Sweat, DK Metcalf, and Jonah Williams. That rounds out the top 10. Devin Bush, Ed Oliver, Andre Dillard, Christian Wilkins, Derek's Jaguars get TJ Hawkinson. Panthers get A.J. Brown, Drew Lock. Goes to the Giants. So 3 quarterbacks in the first round: Cody Ford, Greedy Williams, Rashawn Gary. That's the top 20. Jeffrey Simmons off the injuries. Seattle Seahawks get him. Cleveland Farrell from Clemson goes to Baltimore. Noah Fant, Marquise Brown, Jerry Tillery for the Eagles. Brian Burns, Josh Jacobs, Garrett Bradbury, DeAndre Baker, Byron Murphy, Darnell Savage, Irv Smith. So 3 quarterbacks in the first round. Washington Redskins are able to get Dwayne Haskins. I think that's a match made in heaven if they decide to do that, make the right move there, trading up with the Jaguars. We see the talent in this draft. It's really concentrated in the front 7 and the offensive line. So teams that are needy in those areas have an opportunity to get that. And I think more offensive skill position players went than I've seen projected. You get 3 receivers, 3 tight ends, and the running back and Josh Jacobs. It'll be interesting to see how this draft goes, but I think you know how it is with mock drafts. Maybe 3 or 4 picks get nailed accurately. Everything can change based on trades, but I like what we were able to put together. It was a fun exercise.
Yeah, I think it was a great point that this is a very deep draft in the trenches, both offense and defensive line. So teams that need help there will be ecstatic for that. But I think you're right on your second point as well. Just because we're seeing a lot of heavy of the offensive defensive linemen in the drafts, I think once the draft comes and you start seeing maybe some of these skill guys fall, they'll start coming off the board a lot more than people think, just because that's what they are. They're skill guys, and people just can't help themselves from taking them. So that is going to do it for our mock draft prediction here at DMV Streams. Want to see all that good stuff from us from today, all days, all those roundtables, NBA, NFL, all that stuff. Make sure to check us out at DMVSTREAM.COM.
This content is brought to you by Dental Associates. For more than 39 years, Dr. Stephen Price has been practicing dentistry in Northern Virginia. A member of the American Dental Association, the Northern Virginia Dental Society, and the Virginia Dental Society, Price is considered an expert in Invisalign and continues to be an award-winning innovator in the industry.